So we've gone Lord, Professor, Savage. From this morning, it's pretty alarming, isn't it, on what needs to be done? Terrifying, you might think. But what I'm going to do is share with you some practical things that you can do right now, this afternoon, tomorrow. I wonder who here, like Tom, has had formal negotiation skills training. Can we have a show of hands? Okay. Well, that's still enough to help me get turkey on the table if the rest of you turn up for one of our training programs. The important thing about negotiation and conflict resolution in its broadest context is that it is a learnable skill. And it's a skill that you can apply at home, in life in general, and of course in a commercial context. And fascinating to watch the conflict unfold this morning and the difference of opinions. Hope to get those three on a program shortly. What I'm going to do to start with is to tell you a story really about three core principles that are very close to my heart, by way of setting up what I'm going to share with you this morning. 2,957 days ago, I dropped down dead. On the plus side, if I might just lighten the mood a little, I'm still here, right? But every single one of those days, I not only count my lucky stars, but I experience the world I live in a very different way. It's different in the way that I did before. This particular, as my wife lovingly refers to it, as my attention-seeking incident. Let me share the gory details, as this is rather pertinent to the important stuff, and it is relevant, I promise you, that I'm going to share with you today about commercial conflict and in its broader, specifically negotiation. It was, if you can imagine, a chilly autumn Sunday morning, and I was running in the Royal Parks half marathon. Admittedly, I wasn't very well prepared, very important in our negotiation, which I'll come back to. I'd flown back from a business trip, honest, from Las Vegas, the day before, and I was literally miles behind my training schedule. But I wasn't a novice. I'd run a London marathon, a full marathon, a few years before, and regularly ran for exercise. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, I'll tell you. I was running with a bunch of mates and 15,000 other idiots on this half marathon, raising money for, wait for it, the British Heart Foundation. When at 11.2 miles, not far from the finish, the lights went out. My lights went out, and I suffered what the professionals call a myocardial infarction, more fashionably called a heart attack. It was quite a dramatic one. But the first astonishing piece of luck was that there was a doctor running behind me. They immediately administered CPR and kept the juices flowing. Shortly after that, the St. John's defib team arrived, fired me back up. Not long after that, I was in an ambulance that scooped me up and fast-tracked me to the Hammersmith Hospital and their specialty heart unit. Within 42 minutes, they'd put 2 stents into my heart, chilled me down to 32 degrees, and put me in an induced coma to stabilize my situation, and then wait for my family quite a long 3 days when they brought me around to see what damage might have been done to my brain. Now, I should tell you that there is a regular and somewhat lively debate between my hilarious children as to how much damage was done. But the doctors were satisfied that 3 months rehab would see me back to normal. And here I am. I'm very pleased to be here. What did I learn from that, and what's the relevance of that in negotiation? Well, firstly, objectivity. I have now in my life, and there's nothing like potentially losing everything, absolute clarity on what I want in any situation. Empathy. I don't pay lip service to other people, particularly if they behave badly or say daft things. But I do have a genuine interest in their needs and what they care about. And finally, creativity. by being more objective about my needs and having more empathy for others and their needs, it opens up a much less conventional and more imaginative thinking and approach. And these three tenets form the foundations of successful navigation. If you simply applied these three, and I will explain how and why, you will do better deals and you will strengthen relationships. Let's just talk about what we mean by commercial conflict or negotiation, as we're here to talk about specifically. The slightly longer version is conflict is a state of dissonance, which exists with varying degrees in the thoughts, beliefs, and or ideals between people or within oneself. And I'm sure we've all thought those things. I always think about, driving a car that someone's rung me up. A little old lady down in the close to where I live said, "Oh, I'd like to buy your car." And as I'm driving down the road, thinking, well, she said she'll pay $2,000. It's not in good shape. I'll take 10% off. And as I go into her in and out drive past the mansion, and the butler comes out to help me get out of the car and give it a wipe down before she comes to see it, I realise that negotiating myself is not a good idea, and we do it a lot. In a commercial context, it is an imbalance between one or more parties' preferred outcome. What the government might want to get it elected versus what the government says and reflects what we want to save our planet presents a conflict. And those three tenets can be used to navigate our way through them. Now, let me just give you a bit of reassurance that our entire model for helping you learn how to negotiation is not off the back of me skipping around a park 8 years ago. In our organisation, we've got 50-odd years of commercial stuff that you do day in, day out. Buying decisions, selling decisions, internal negotiation, managing people. We have 10,000 hours plus of conflict resolution. So we sit in on negotiations all the time and help people gain that objectivity, empathy, and creativity to help them navigate their way through. I won't go on about the gold mine in Ghana or the retailer in the US or the pharmaceuticals in the Middle East because Nick's already done that. We are qualified as coaches because I think we've all been on a great training course. But if you just go back to the day job on Monday, armed with a set of skills, you've completely wasted your time and money. So coaching, talking to people about these challenges in the context of these skills is very important. And we've trained a lot of people. We've sat with lots of people. Much more important than you, much less important to you. I'm talking about your position in your business, as you understand. But whether you are, a young executive trying to get to grips with the challenges of managing people in your department or doing that first deal, or indeed the CEO trying to manage the commercial culture of your business, the principles, generally speaking, are exactly the same. We've read the books, we've read the research, we've got the T-shirt, literally available on our website. Let's put this into the context of your world, though. And I've had the good fortune to have a conversation with a number of you, the farming community, I should say, rather than the professional services also represented here. And the issues are endless. Inputs versus outputs. I'm not going to pretend to tell you how much I know about your business, but costing, buying, fertilizers, machinery, buying, selling of seeds, professional services, and how to deal with those, planning and dealing with the planning world in terms of change of use and that sort of thing. Chemicals, new euphemisms that I think we used to call pesticides. Now we talk about plant protection. There's all sorts of interesting language being used in here. There are buying groups, there are collectives, there are traded commodities where apparently there's no room for any negotiation. And of course, carbon, which has been well talked about this morning. So there's a lot of stuff going on. and trying to apply a set of skills to help you do better deals, buying or selling, or manage people more effectively, but not at the other's cost. This is about value creation. And if there's one thing I did feel from this morning's session that felt like a potential for great sort of unity if it can be brought, strength in being together. And good negotiation is not about skinning the other side alive and walking away with the best deal, because I promise you they'll get you back next time, all the time after, all the time after. So if you can, and this is not about holding hands and skipping through the daisies negotiation, it's tough, it's commercially focused, it needs to generate profit or mitigate against loss, but there's no reason why both sides can't benefit. I don't like win-win, it feels too equal to me. But we do like value creation, and the application of negotiation skills can help you do that. And by the way, unconditional discounting and goodwill, and I threw that in, or I met them halfway, that's not negotiation. That's giving stuff away for nothing, including your credibility, and setting precedent for the future. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do to not do things like that. I'd like to thank the number of you that completed a negotiation skills assessment. We have an online survey, and I'd like to extend, for those of you that saw the link but didn't bother doing it, if this is of interest to you, then we're very happy for you to complete that survey, and we will furnish you with a copy of the report that what the next 20 minutes is based on or so. Essentially, we're going, how good are you at this stuff? And it's structured, as you might expect, around objectivity, empathy, and creativity. So let's start with the first one. This is how you fared. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was at school, getting 66% was a bit of a result, to be honest with you. I mean, that definitely got through my parents. I mean, it's more of a miracle than anything else. And actually was only applied to pottery O-level, as it happens. But when we look at this in the context of best practice, and best practice is really the best that we see in untrained individuals. And remember, this is averaged data from not that many of you. So the data really just sets up where the specific issues came from this set. But hopefully that this will be of interest. And I'm going to share with you a pointer, something you can do right now as a result of it. What the answers to the questions told us was that there is a lack of structure in your planning. In some cases, there isn't much planning at all from some of the conversations that I was having. And people will say to us, I haven't got time. Do you know how busy I am? But if we said that you'd get a 10% better return by investing an hour of your time in that, you'd do it, right? Please nod ferociously, enthusiastically, because you really should at this point. And planning for your negotiations, whether you are buying or selling, and indeed whether you are in a resource or management sort of type conflict, is about having clarity on your goals. Remember, we were talking about objectivity, what you want to achieve, not how you're going to achieve it. Don't confuse your strategy with your objective, but what you want to achieve. What is your pitch point? I.e., what can you defend credibly, and what you're going to ask for, and what very few people go into negotiations with, what is your walk-away position? If you know the point that you would walk away in a negotiation, you will display greater confidence, you will be much more relaxed about saying no, and by the way, no is not the end of a negotiation. For anyone that's experienced children, let's face it, we all were them, weren't we? The bad news for all of you, I believe, is that we all peak at about the age of 7. So when my son says to me, "Dad, can I have an ice cream?" and I say no because I'm a responsible adult, do you think he sees that as the end of the negotiation or the beginning? And of course they do. They're brilliant at it because they don't have any of the inhibitions that we all have and build as we get older, amazingly. Even politicians. So it appeared today. So, pitching. There's a gap there. The importance of being specific, of telling people what you want. Don't tell them how badly you want it, but there's no harm in being specific, and I will illustrate that for you in just 1 second. Very counterintuitive this, put your conditions before your offers. If you are prepared to do this for me, then I will accept that price. Tell them what the price is going to be for you accepting what they're going to do. And the result, and this is an interesting read actually, because there was a 78% score, right, quantitative score on this, but best practice is typically around 74%. The reason why this is interesting, and please don't be offended, but I think we tend to post-rationalize deals that we do, because we're so relieved to have got it over the line. We're so pleased that actually we've come to some sort of resolution. And if we haven't done enough planning, we don't have a context to see whether or not we were successful. We just go, how do I feel now? That's pretty good. And that is all about thinking about the context of your deal and the deal versus the objectives you set. So let's get into the kind of so what bit. What do I do about that then? Well, here's a bit of theory. In most negotiations, there is what we call the conflict playing field. You have an ambition. I want to buy this, I want to sell this. I need to get this price for it. I want to pay this price for it. You have a proposition and you have collateral. You have stuff that you can use to oil the wheels of the deal. You might be able to pay cash, or you might be able to put floor mats in it, or you might be able to do the deal sooner or build it in as part of an ongoing relationship. All sorts of complexities that you can put together in a very structured way. What is critically important is that you have a pitch point. You have a point at which you are prepared to say, I can credibly defend that point that I'm going to ask for. Now, lots of people pad their offers. They go in and they're going to say, I'm going to ask for 25% more because I always get beaten up by them, and then I can get it across the line with that discount. Very dangerous thing to do as it happens. Culturally, it's quite a common thing to do. But I'd be pretty careful about it. Make sure it's identified as part of the sport rather than just you capitulating and setting a precedent for the future. Because you will set a precedent for the future. We teach very senior procurement people to review deals that they do with suppliers in all sorts of sectors. And we say, make a note of what they capitulated on. And that's where they start. So when people tell us that, oh, I hate procurement, they always wang on about price. I'm always getting killed by them. It's because they can, and because people fold. We don't have to. We can say no. And don't think just by saying no, you get thrown out. Remember the son with the ice cream. The other critical point is the walkaway point. Okay? And really ask yourself the question, if this was on the table, would you genuinely walk away? This stuff might seem quite obvious to you. I hope it seems very intuitive, and I hope you do some of it at the moment. The data suggests that perhaps you don't do enough of it. So there we go. The other thing we need to think about, of course, is the other side has the same thing. And so in context, we've got the other side, who may or may not have put their plan together, who may or may not have a structured pitch point and a walkaway position. And let me give you an example. I'm going to use a tractor because it was the last major piece of kit that I saw before I walked in here, and I can sort of put this into context. Let's imagine, I hope you can see in the top left-hand side, my pitch point for a second-hand bit of hardware, let's say, is 15,235. By the way, if you're ever pitching something, make it a specific number, because 15 grand tells me, the buyer, that you've rounded it up. So I'm after you right from the start. So make it look like you've worked on it. £15,235. Let's imagine, bottom left, that one of you has said to me, well, that's all very well, Richard, I'm going to give you 14 grand for it. We're not going to do a deal, right? There is no deal to be done. There is a vast gap between those two prices. But of course we have flexibility, and we think about that flexibility. Sometimes we have less, sometimes we have more. It's determined by market conditions and that sort of thing. So let's just imagine I've already had an offer of £14,350. So if you offer me £14,349, I can say no thanks very much, because I know I've got an offer. This is a little simplistic, I appreciate, but the principles apply to every single variable that you take into your negotiation. And let's just imagine that actually you have some flexibility at all. The fascinating thing about this is this space here. This overlap is where the deal will get done. It is the only place the deal will get done. And I suspect that a lot of you, certainly from the conversations I've had, and when I say you, I mean the world at large, myself included, has been guilty in the past of being much closer to our walkaway positions than our, let's say, their walkaway positions. And the skills of negotiation are the navigation within this arena. I mentioned earlier about being specific. Pitching and being specific is really important, okay? Now, it differs depending on where you are in the negotiation, and I also mentioned how important it is to put your conditions before your offers. So you're going to think that all my children eat ice cream, okay, and I suppose at some point they did. But picture, if you will, my 17-year-old daughter lying on a sofa watching telly, multitude of screens in front of her, communicating with several hundred mates as far as I can work out. And I'm slaving away in the kitchen, and she yells to me, "Dad, can I have a Magnum ice cream?" I mentioned earlier I was a responsible parent. So I say to her, of course, if you tidy up, condition, I'll give you that Magnum ice cream. Can everybody see the flaw in that? And not just because it was my 17-year-old daughter. She, of course, leans over, picks a cushion up off the floor, casts it onto the other sofa, and says, "Go and get me that ice cream, fat boy." The skill with this is to think about the relationship in any negotiation between the condition and the offer. The smart dad might have said, if you're prepared to tidy up, I'll give you a treat. Imagine this in a commercial context. I'd love to come around, meet up with you. We're looking for some great prices. We've got some fantastic products to talk to you about. The start of a negotiation. If you're prepared to tidy up, I'm de-risking by saying, I will give you a treat. She might not see the big fatherly hug that she gets as the treat, but I will have got away with the cushion being lobbed on the other sofa. Better still, and this is where you're selling and people are coming after you, and they will put a specific condition and a vague offer on the table. I might say, because I'm even smarter than that, and let's face it, a trained and highly experienced negotiator, if you pick the cushions up off the floor, do a load of laundry, tidy up your bedroom, empty the dishwasher, and take the cat for a walk, I'll give you a treat. Okay? I've just reversed what she did to start with. And this is what a lot of well-trained negotiators will do against you. Don't get seduced by the treat. Because the treat, I promise you, will be much less attractive when it's spelled out. And of course, the best thing to do is to be specific, okay? If you're prepared to empty the dishwasher, pick the cushions up off the floor, tidy up your bedroom, take the cat for a walk, I'll give you a Magnum ice cream. And that's where you make a pitch, and that's where we make proposals. So just bear in mind that those, the 2, 3, 4 on that list. where you can actually gain much greater control. And control's a lot of what it's about in negotiation. The last point on objectivity was result. And I mean, a lot of what we're talking about, of course, today, COP26 has been mentioned. What an extraordinary negotiation and some phenomenal behavior and just the words and the sort of vernacular used in the president of COP26, Mott Sharma, allowing the word phase out to be changed to phase down. And the principally Indians, but Indians and Chinese delegations managing to get a huge concession right at the end in that 15 minutes. The presidency and the organization was blinded by the result, the finishing line, and so they capitulated. And you might say, well done those that got that, well, we're going to phase it down, we're not going to phase it out. And that's a short-term result for them. That takes pressure off the Indian delegation and the Chinese to perhaps manage the time through which that happens. But boy, have they lost a lot of trust and credibility amongst their partners in that. And that will come home to roost when they're all together in 12 months' time. Let's look at empathy. Questioning. Ask good questions. Ask really good questions. Brilliant ones this morning, indeed, and from you as well. And by the way, if you've got any questions, by all means use the VVox thing to pitch up here. I'll leave a bit of time to chat through that afterwards. Asking good questions, pre-prepare information that you need. Learning is a superbly important part of negotiation. We seem blind and deaf to what goes on around us. I don't know if it's ever happened to any of you, but has anyone ever said to you, "You're not listening to me"? We don't listen to people. We've got 2 of them, for goodness sake. And yet we don't use them in proportion to our mouth. And I promise you one thing, if you're talking, you're definitely not listening. And if you listen to the other side, you will get most of the clues as to where you might be able to repackage a situation and provide a better solution to them. So listen to their needs and clarify all the way through when you're in a negotiation with somebody. Even if it's a short conversation, even if, we don't have to be all sitting in, oak-panelled boardrooms, smoking cigars, doing kind of major negotiations. This might be a quick phone call to a supplier. This might be, an organised but social event with someone that's buying from you. But always clarify, do I understand? Have you agreed to this? And by the way, there's a great technique where if people start behaving badly, abusing the situation, perhaps bullying you into agreeing to something, that clarification, that summarizing back to them of what they're saying suddenly sounds much worse to them, and they'll often tone their pitch down. Happened this morning, actually, but we won't go into that. And understanding, it's all about understanding the context. It's about testing other options. It's about being flexible with your strategy, not necessarily your objectives. And clarifying the roles that you're playing. I don't know whether you negotiate on your own or in teams. We would always advocate being more than one of you in a negotiation, a significant one, if you possibly can. And make sure one is leading. One is taking responsibility for making the proposal, for allowing the concessions, for trading stuff. The other one is simply clarifying and summarizing and asking good questions. It's a very good cop way to approach them. So let's go through these 3. Question, learn, and understand. No big story about questioning. Just use the best negotiating question of all time. And I'm really not exaggerating here. Under what circumstances is simply the question you want to know the answer to. Whether you are buying, selling, or managing people, you're basically saying, what is the price to get what I want? Okay? It also is an open question. So it doesn't say, so when you say, can I have this tractor for $15,235? The question is, under what circumstances would you pay $15,235? Okay? And this really works, right? I mean, I use this in real life, exactly these words, when I sit in front of customers and they go, oh, I'm not sure about that, Richard, and we haven't got that many people we want to put through the program, or the coaching scope looks. I will always, always ask, under what circumstances could we do it like this? It makes them think about the art of the possible. Listening is just a no-brainer. I mean, really, just go into meetings and go, I'm going to say half what I said last time. I promise you'll learn more. It's amazing. I'm terrible at it, by the way. But it's a weapon to be used, because they'll tell you the answers. If you ask the good questions, you ask somebody a direct question, more often than not, you will get a more fruitful answer. And so we have a sort of model. Ask, listen, learn from what you've listened, learn from what they've said on the other side. Tell them what you understand and how that impacts on your position or your proposal, and then as appropriate, go back and ask more questions, but listen to the answers. There's an adage in negotiation that says that behind a pitch lies a need. If someone comes to you with a price on a fertilizer or a seed offer or some hardware that they want you to engage with, always think about, why are they doing it now? Are we at the end of a selling cycle? Are they trying to shift something that's the last in a product line? I'm not saying that everybody's cynical, but there will often be a reason behind that. And even simply asking those questions means that every now and then you will get some fruitful information. It might present an opportunity. Any impromptu pitches might present that. Understanding is just more about this listening, okay? When you hear someone say, and I mean, read the headlines. You will look at the headlines in a different context to this after this, I hope. And someone says, I couldn't agree to that. Or they say, well, I'm looking for in the region of or around about. Or they say, that would be very difficult. And you normally walk away and you go, oh, well, didn't get that over the line. They say, not as things stand. Or, and we heard this came from an interview with a procurement person recently who said, I don't make a habit of making demands from suppliers on virtual calls within the first 5 minutes. When you hear these things, just stop. Try and take a helicopter view of the situation and ask yourself the question, is there any other meaning to that? Are there any signals that I can take out of that? I could not agree to that. Well, maybe someone else could. And if you can't agree to that, then perhaps you can agree to something else. In the region of or around about. If anybody says, I'm looking for a 5 to 10% discount, they'll never get more than a 5% discount. I promise you that. Well, they shouldn't. So don't entertain any of that. You go, thanks very much. Hey, I've just found a 5% one. All the others are unavailable. So that would be very difficult. Presents an opportunity to go, well, how can I solve that for you? Maybe the barrier is a problem that I've created. Not as things stand. Okay, well, maybe things will be standing differently tomorrow or this afternoon or when you've had a glass of water or in 6 months' time. I don't make a habit of making demands. I don't make it a habit. Anybody who says to me, oh, it's standard. I'm not standard. Right? Don't accept standard. It's standard terms. Everyone else does it. Okay. Good for them. Anyway, let's talk about what I'm looking for out of this. Virtual calls. Okay, well, perhaps we can have a meeting face-to-face in 5 minutes. Are you Rottweiler for the whole meeting or just the first 5 minutes? Who knows? So again, simplistic, obvious stuff, but we don't do it. And trying to think outside of the intensity of the engagement is a real skill. It's a really hard thing to do. It's all about trying to be objective of a situation. But going back to my earlier story, I'm afraid of nothing now. because I just look at the situation and I go, however scary that person is, they're just a person. And none of this matters. It's only money. I'll back myself. I could get a job in a pub or something. It doesn't matter. And your ability to have what I would call professional ambivalence, or in a positive way, not giving a shit, actually stands you in good stead. Forgive the language. I'm sure I'll get lots of emails about that. So that's to understand. Creativity. Creativity isn't drawing pictures. It's just about being a bit more imaginative about how you solve the problem. We're going in for this deal. We know what's going to happen. They're going to beat us up on price. We'll beg, borrow, and steal our way back to our position, and we'll do a deal. Try and do it differently. Pay in cash. Create a retained relationship. Use time as part of your negotiation. Inflexibility, it's all about having strategy options. Lots of people go in with a strategy. I have a vaguely controversial view that Brexit was a strategy, not an objective. Okay? It was a strategy to solve issues that people had around immigration and rules and admin and all sorts of other stuff. In my view, there are plenty of other ways to solve those issues. But the government and a significant number of people, rightly or wrongly, it's done, I think was the message, so get over it from this morning. But it's a strategy, and they got caught up in the strategy, and the strategy became the objective. And that gets you into trouble sometimes. So, having options, accepting that you might be able to do things differently, think about how you might trade things differently, can stand you in good stead. Influence, well, this is about credibility, scarcity, classic one at the moment, and I'll show you an example, and social proof. If there's unity, if there's a movement towards something, then it gives you strength in a negotiation. And pushback, don't be afraid of pushback. We like we like no in negotiations. No means, from the other side, I haven't asked for too little. If they say no when they're running out of the door, it's not so good. But normally, no, let's carry on the conversation. And when somebody says, when you're sitting around the table, I could get the same product cheaper and better, don't go, oh well, go, I wonder why I'm here then. Okay? So flexibility, well, that's just a repackaging challenge is my tip for you. I need it faster, slower, I need it different. It might be a timing issue, it might be a wording issue, it might be a presentation issue. Some people don't like how things are articulated. Some people don't like solutions and the way they're putting. The reason why there is a dog in an IKEA bag there, if anyone hadn't spotted that, is because the New York subway said that all dogs travelling on the subway had to go in a bag. That is a problem-solving exercise if you've got a large dog. Their objective was to stop large dogs. Well, some wise sage said, well, I'm going to have a bigger bag and I'm going to cut the corners out of it. This is where we were yesterday. Sam, my business partner over there, and I were here, okay? I don't know if anyone's been there, but Felixstowe Port. Boy, is there a lot of conflict going on there. The challenges that they currently face are really interesting. What's equally interesting is that they are doing a brilliant job. The problem isn't actually with them. It's at the supply chain coming in and the supply chain going out. So when we're talking this morning about shortening supply chains and managing stuff differently, actually what they have is the most phenomenal logistical challenge that they're doing a pretty good job of. But what they are also part of is an influence technique called scarcity. It's probably about the most popular one about at the moment, because all the senior procurement people that we're working with at the moment, and the sale in retail and in the sales people in the brands that are trying to sell the stuff, all the procurement people are thinking about is, can I get the product? Don't care about the price. And by the way, procurement, I don't know if there are any procurement people here, but everyone goes, they always talk about price, I mentioned earlier. Risk first, relationship second, then we get into price and logistics and all of that sort of stuff. That's what they care about. Is the product good enough? Quality was mentioned earlier. We're talking about, I've learned, fascinating stuff about, moisture, protein levels. They're all currencies that you can trade. So, using short supply, high demand, unique opportunity, something ending soon, only available till. You think about how Apple do it with iPhones and PlayStation does it with, consoles. It's a really clever technique. Pushback. When someone says no, I implore you, however powerful they are, however hungry you are to get the deal across the line, do not, under any circumstance, capitulate in the face of rejection. Okay? Because the chances are, if you ask some good questions, if you think imaginatively about the solution that you might be able to bring to the party that the other side haven't considered, you might well get an equitable deal across the line. We heard a wonderful story from a colleague of ours, it really is true, where this capitulation thing is in reverse, where somebody, a conservatory sales guy, rang up an ex-colleague of ours and said, hi there, I heard you moved house. Boy, have I got a fantastic offer for you. We can offer you exclusively 10% off this wonderful new conservatory of ours. And Anne said, I have a first floor flat. He said, I can do better than that. We can fit it before the spring. And that discount comes in cash. I live on a first floor flat. Okay, I'm going to call you at a more convenient time, but I can offer you 20% now if. And it went on. Because he didn't ask the questions, didn't bonkers, right? So think about which aspect is not working and what you can do about it. That's probably enough excitement for one morning in terms of negotiation. I hope that some of what I've shared resonates. These are tangible skills. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got any questions, hang on a second, I've got some here, so I'm going to just answer some of those in just 1 second. But in summary, my advice to anybody, and let's face it, you are highly experienced negotiators, it's just the detail, I suspect, but plan. There are structures that you can use. Be specific in your offers. Ask the right questions of people and then listen to the answers. Have a strategy for no. What will we do differently? What might we do to help this? One more, don't make assumptions. I think statistically, 97.8% of you will have assumed that the doctor that was running behind me in the half marathon that saved my life was a bloke. She wasn't. Thank you very much.